Data entry is one of the most basic things we do in Excel, and at times it can be boring, but there are some techniques, some shortcuts, and a feature called AutoFill that are really going to help. Before we do this in this particular worksheet, it's called data entry. It's an empty sheet. We're in the workbook O2, entering data. In the lower right-hand corner is a slider bar. There's a black rectangle there. If you hold down the left mouse button, you can zoom in or zoom out. We're only going to be using about 7 columns here as we build a small little worksheet here. So that's good enough. I'm going to be putting in some data in cell A2. I can either click on A2 or use the arrow keys to make that cell become the active one. I type sales. Notice it's on the left-hand side of the cell. That's what happens automatically in Excel unless you're typing values. I press enter. I could press tab to move to the right. I can press any of the arrow keys. I'm moving down a column, so I'll press enter. And then type overhead. And enter, and then profits, enter. A bit later, I decide to change overhead to the word expenses. I'll click there. We don't have to erase it. I'll just type right over it. Now, maybe I spell it the British way, the Canadian way. That's okay, but later I decide to change that. We don't have to retype it, although that's relatively short. To edit a cell, you can either click on it and then go into the formula bar, click in the appropriate spot, make some changes, or you can double click near the entry and do the editing right in the cell. I'm going to double click behind the C, double click, backspace, S, and enter. I'm going to be putting in some numbers, and caps lock has just been on maybe. The number I'm going to type is 120, and I happen to press O instead of 0. They're right next to each other on the keyboard. I tab over, 160, typing this one correctly, tab, and you can see the difference. Numerical entries in Excel, when entered, always are right aligned. We learned that way back in the 2nd grade before adding and subtracting and eventually multiplying. Let's just do this all over again. 1, 2, 0. If it's not purely numerical or if it's not a formula, Excel will left align it. Numbers are right aligned. All right, I'm going to be putting in 4 numbers, and as I move to the right here, I'll be pressing tab. So I type the 160, tab, 210, tab, 250, tab, 325, and 440. And after the last entry, I'll press enter. And then 6 more numbers here, starting in cell B3. And then pressing enter after the last one. I'm going to be putting in monthly names across the top, so I'll type January and tab over. Now, a shortcut that you wouldn't know about falls under the heading of autofill. Anytime you have a month spelled out or a 3-letter abbreviation, you can point to the lower right-hand corner of that cell. That's called the fill handle. Notice how the mouse pointer changes its shape, becomes thinner. Holding down the left mouse button, I'm dragging across. Those little pop-ups below suggest what's about to happen. We'll get the other months, and we could drag all the way out to December and even beyond. It'll start over again. And we can do this in a variety of different ways. You can start with any month you want, and you can use a 3-letter abbreviation. If I type in JUL, and then point to that lower right-hand corner and click and drag, you probably have guessed already what we're about to see here. Same thing happens rightward. If you drag rightward or downward, same thing happens. If you drag upward, I'll drag upward from here. We go backward in time. Same thing happens if we drag leftward. So you quickly get used to that. It also works with days of the week. And also, we can use the letter Q and the number 1 in a variety of combinations. And you can actually use any of the numbers 1 through 4 because Excel only cycles through those numbers as we use that feature. And of course, we're meaning quarter. And the same thing works with QTR and any combination of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the word quarter in that same combination of 1, 2, 3, or 4. So these are handy techniques. And of course, these are often used for column headings and row headings. So some shortcuts with autofill and just some basic thoughts and ideas about how we do data entry and editing in Excel.